Parents and their children were busily making signs to let the school board know they want their school to stay open. Kaiser Elementary is one of those schools with less than 200 enrollment. But enrollment has increased since October. New playground equipment is on the way, and the parents and children want the school to stay open.
She was very upset last night when we found out. And how do you explain to your kids? They don't understand this politics stuff, you know.
The new play equipment, it's going to be big, and it's going to have all kinds of toys in it because it's going to have, because see, it's going to be like a Lincoln log, but it's bigger than Lincoln logs.
But the children at Kaiser aren't the only ones who may be losing their school. Last year, a proposal to close 6 schools was defeated by 1 vote. This year, twice as many schools are recommended for closing, but the school board may have twice as many financial problems. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at Kaiser Elementary School. Parts of rural Oklahoma became treacherous lakes late last night. Near the town of Weatherford, people were trapped by rising water before they knew it, and rescuers tied themselves together with rope to help them wade to safety. This woman was trapped for more than 6 hours before help finally arrived. Weatherford was one of the hardest hit areas of the state, but to the northeast, in Kingfisher, the story was much the same, but more dramatically so. As many as 70 blocks of heavily populated city streets were underwater. Again, rescuers searched the houses by boat, looking for anyone who may need their help.
Do you want out over there?
In all, more than 600 people were forced from their homes. Many would not leave them last night, but as the water kept rising this morning, they found out they didn't have any choice. Property damage is impossible to estimate yet, but officials say it will undoubtedly be in the millions of dollars. The water was expected to crest late this morning, but that doesn't mean the danger will be over then. More rain is expected late this afternoon, and the entire west central section of the state is under a flash flood watch. Sherry Sellers for NBC News in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. The school that received the good news is West Nichols Hills Elementary. The school's daycare and preschool classes had been scheduled to shut down May 28th. West Nichols Hills and one other school were the only ones to offer preschool and daycare classes under the city school system. It is true West Nichols Hills is thousands of dollars in the hole, but the parents felt strongly about keeping the school open.
I'm a working mother, and it's very convenient. And my children has really improved. My daughter started writing at 3 years old, and now she's reading, and she's just 4.
I've had my children at another daycare, and they were not taking care of the property. I didn't find this out till the end of the school year.
School Director Sandy Hill says the school board's vote Monday night to keep the preschool open indefinitely is very good news.
I think that the parent support is what did it. Parents calling, writing letters, and looking at the facts and figures and realizing that the ones they had weren't correct.
Next Monday, the school board will decide which schools to close permanently. But the people here think it's a good sign the school board decided to keep the daycare and the preschool open, and that might mean a good sign to keep the entire school open. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at West Nichols Hills Elementary School. It happened in 1948. 2 tornadoes hit within 1 week, causing the second greatest tornado damage ever in the state of Oklahoma. 50 aircrafts were destroyed, 50 others damaged. Overall, there was more than $10 million in losses. With the cost of planes today, losses would be phenomenal if a tornado hit Tinker, and with that in mind, a complicated disaster plan has been devised. Most of the base's airplanes will be put in hangars. Those left outside won't be found sitting this closely together. The plan calls for them to be spaced so that if one's hit, it won't hit another. Before anything is moved, a severe weather warning has to be sent from here to the base commander. Tinker's weather station monitors conditions around the clock, as well as the National Weather Service. Colonel P.J. Daniels says all the planning pays off.
The success of them, I think, can be attested to from the minimum number of deaths and injuries. Even though that we have oftentimes a short warning time to prepare, has been in the past adequate time to shelter people in a safe, secure facility that's been pre-planned and pre-designated, and our people have been trained to take shelter immediately should a tornado be approaching the base or be discovered on or around the vicinity of the base.
With Tinker's disaster preparedness plan, the base's sophisticated aircrafts and numerous employees can feel well protected. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 at Tinker Air Force Base. This prison's been a part of the El Reno community since 1935. The mutual benefits have been numerous. Prison officials feel a second institution should double those benefits.
The entire issue of the detention center is in the preliminary phase, and we are in the process now of sending letters to representatives of the local media as well as community leaders. But the community has been very supportive of this institution for over 50 years, and I wouldn't anticipate any changes through the future.
The illegal alien center would be much like this minimum security camp at the prison. There are few restrictions inside. The limitation is that one can't go outside. The people aren't there because they're criminals. They're imprisoned because of illegal immigration. The center simply holds them until they can be transported out of the country. The federal government must be pretty serious about bringing the institution to El Reno. In about 2 weeks, the director of the Bureau of Prisons will be here to look over the proposed site and talk with the community. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 at the El Reno Federal Correctional Institution.
Okay.
Jerry. 14-year-old Jimmy Combs was very happy to see her parents. About 3 o'clock Sunday afternoon, there had been a chance she wouldn't see them again. Jimmy and a friend had been playing in a ditch when the rain began coming down hard. The water in this ditch swept them a couple of blocks to the 3800 block of Northwest 64th Street. The water was down now, but minutes earlier a strong tide carried Jimmy to this sewer where the water had risen to 5 feet. Jimmy's friend managed to get out and went to the nearby home of Floyd Rowe. Rowe had his wife call the police department while he went outside.
I got down there and hollered at her.
What'd you tell her?
She was holding on.
What'd you tell her?
I just told her to hold on. We had help coming.
And what'd she say?
She said, well, I'm hanging on.
Jimmy had crawled to the side of the sewer and was holding onto this hose. She was screaming for help when Captain Jim Hopkins arrived. He went down a manhole, tied a rope around Jimmy, and pulled her out.
It was real bad. The water's probably 5 feet deep. A grown man couldn't have stood up in it.
Cold water?
Cold water, yes.
How much longer do you think that she could have stayed down there if you hadn't got?
She probably could have stayed down there till the water quit. Where she was safe, as long as she didn't move.
But if she had slipped, I mean...
Oh, well, yeah, she'd been gone. We thought she was gone when we first saw the water.
But Jimmy Combs had been lucky this Sunday afternoon. Bill Ross, Action 4 in Northwest Oklahoma City.
number 2, follow 2 today, 727, 4 mile, final 17, right?
Last August, air safety became a major issue. President Reagan fired almost 11,000 striking air traffic controllers. Despite the firing, the FAA has maintained that flying now is safer than ever before. Action 4 has obtained a copy of this letter signed by the commander of Tinker Air Force Base, Major General J.T. Edwards. The letter says pilots should be especially careful in Oklahoma City because air traffic here is so congested. It praises pilots and controllers still on the job for the excellent work they're doing. But the letter also says the potential for a mid-air collision has increased during this last year, and we have indeed been fortunate in averting such a disaster. The increased danger is blamed on the loss of some services that were provided before the strike. Those services won't be provided again until new controllers, like those being trained here, are ready to go on the job. One fired air traffic controller was astonished by the letter.
Well, I was surprised because the FAA in general has been so misleading in telling the people that it is a safe and efficient system, which it isn't. It wasn't before August 3rd, before we went out. It certainly isn't now.
Officials at Tinker Air Force Base say it's just a routine letter. One like this is sent out every year. John Claves with the Public Information Office said no one from the Flight Safety Office could talk to us today. He said they'll be happy to speak with us tomorrow, and we'll follow up this story then. Bill Ross, Action 4 at Tinker Air Force Base.
For each of the Norman High School graduates, tonight was indeed a special night. But for Michael Bentz, the ceremony marks both the beginning and end. You see, Michael was diagnosed as having multiple sclerosis in the 7th grade. An excellent athlete, he saw his dreams and ambitions slowly fade. On top of that, he was faced with moving from his hometown in Kansas and the divorce of his parents. It was then that young Michael began drinking and using drugs.
I crossed an invisible line and became a junkie and drug addict. And I got to a point, I tried to OD New Year's 78. By the grace of God, I didn't die.
Michael finally entered the chemical dependency unit at Central State Hospital, where his addiction has been cured. His advice to other young people?
You can live under any circumstances. And life is great. I love it. I really do. It's fantastic.
As Mike went up to receive his diploma tonight, he got a standing ovation from his classmates. His display of courage and strength has brought a new spirit of hope to the Norman graduates and a new life for Michael. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at the Lloyd Noble Center.
Shortly before 7 this morning, the body of a white female was found on Southeast 29th near Morgan Road. The victim was discovered by an oil field worker just getting off work nearby. The victim's body was found in grass and shrubbery on the north side of the roadway. Police say she had been dead at least a couple of hours. The victim is described in her 50s, but has not yet been identified.
She's described as a white female, approximately 50, 5'10", 160 pounds, shoulder length, dark brown hair. She had a spoon ring on her finger and also had a red and white umbrella. She was wearing purple slacks with a purple, white, and red vertical striped blouse with silver slippers.
Police officers have not yet released an exact cause of death. They say they have no motive and no suspect. Their investigation in the case is continuing. Debbie Mash, Action 4 in North Canadian County.
Landon Wilson has been traveling with antique shows for 9 years. At his booth you'll find old glass as well as new, but all broken because Landon restores chipped and flake crystal. It's an unusual job, but one that can save customers a lot of money. To replace one of these wine glasses would cost $30. This young man can fix the chip for around $8. Here's Here's a glass rim that's chipped in several places, but no worry, it can look like new in a matter of minutes. First, the rim is grinded down until the chips are gone. If you're thinking the glass will now be smaller than the rest, you're wrong. Landon says that all glass is differ in size up to 1/4 of an inch. This kind of work takes precise judgment and skill. In its own way, it's an art.
It's a lost art. It's not a hobby at all. Back long ago, it was done in the glass factories. Instead of throwing a piece back into a scrap pile and redoing it because it was chipped, they would repair it. And it saved a lot of time and a lot of money. There you go.
That is smooth.
It's all perfect.
It's ready to drink out of.
Ready to drink out of.
So if your wedding crystal is too chipped to be seen and too costly to be replaced, it can now be repaired and back on your table in time for your anniversary. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 at Shepherd Mall.
Members of Citizens for a Fair School Board began lining up at 5 this afternoon, a full hour before a more school board meeting was scheduled to begin. These people think the board has acted improperly in firing 6 school administrators who allegedly turned in false expense reports. A petition was circulated calling for board members to resign if they hired 2 Oklahoma City law firms to help in legal battles with the fired school officials. After the meeting was called to order, a motion was passed to move into executive session.
Motion carries 4-0.
The Citizens for a Fair School Board then held an impromptu meeting of their own. For the next 25 minutes, the room took on a revival atmosphere as group members took turns denouncing the school board.
If it is indeed a matter of the morals of 5 individuals or 6 individuals, maybe we better be looking at everybody's morals connected with our school.
The board returned and in just a matter of minutes voted to hire one firm to work in the termination proceeding case and another to defend Superintendent Bob Spence against a libel action brought by a fired administrator. Few in the crowd were happy about it.
Go home! Go home!
After adjourning, all the board members except Dr. Don Ledbetter literally ran out of the building and drove away. Neither the citizens nor the school board is ready to back down, so more could be in for a long, hot summer. Bill Ross, Action 4 in Moore, Oklahoma.
I have no rights whatsoever.
The State House of Representatives was in a lighthearted mood Friday morning, looking forward to a month-long recess. But by mid-afternoon, the mood began to heat up. Changes had been made to the House and Senate agreement on the Department of Human Services appropriations, met late the night before. The Senate had removed legislative oversight from over half of the department $490 million appropriation. Legislators charged Department Head Lloyd Rader had made threats to keep control of department revenues, and they charged his total control of the department has led to a dictatorship that has embarrassed the state. Minority Leader Neil McCaleb urged the House members to reject the amended plan.
We have failed in our objective established last year of legislative oversight. We have abandoned that principle. Make no mistake about it, if we pass out this committee report, we have abandoned our commitment. Representative Barker, I respectfully submit this is not a compromise, it is a capitulation.
Representative Deathridge disagreed. She said although she wasn't pleased, the Senate version didn't mean a House failure.
It's a step. No, we haven't gone as far as I would have liked. If we had the bill out here that we'd agreed to last night, I could have stood here and told you how proud I was of it. But it's not a total failure. And it's not a total abdication of our responsibility. It's a big step.
The House passed the bill, hoping for more control next year. Now the legislature will recess and come back in July. At that time, they plan to allocate the state's surplus funds. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4 at the state capitol.
Sponsored by the Sooners Fiddler Association, there was plenty of fancy fiddling on hand this afternoon. Though cash prizes were in store for the winners, most contestants enter contests like this one for sheer pleasure. Take Jim Hampton, for example. Jim began playing the fiddle when he was just a boy, and as you can see, he's still at it.
I've enjoyed fiddle music all my life. I just love it. It's my enjoyment. That's my thing, just like fishing, hunting, or whatever to other people. And I just really enjoy it.
The catchy tunes captured the attention of hundreds of people in the mall. Before long, many found themselves toe-tapping right along with the performers. With the enthusiasm displayed today, it's safe to say that good old-time fiddling is here to stay. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at the Quail Springs Mall.
Responded to the call shortly after midnight. When they arrived, the blaze had already done its damage. Flames had moved quickly through the mobile home, destroying it. The firemen spent a great deal of the time sifting through the ashes, making sure no sparks were left. That meant bringing out the hoses again to spray down hot spots and cutting down some of the few remaining walls. The fire chief on the scene says the fire started on this end of the trailer when lightning hit a tree next to it. The bulb went down the tree and into the electrical wiring. One half of the mobile home burned to the foundation. The other half was ruined by spreading flames and smoke. The total loss is estimated to be over $10,000. There was no one in the trailer at the time of the fire. The owner is out of town. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 in far south Oklahoma City.
This 727 was the first Pan American jet to fly out of Oklahoma City. Because of its many destinations, Pan Am calls itself the round-the-world airline. Lieutenant Governor Spencer Bernard cut the ribbon officially inaugurating Pan Am service out of Will Rogers. The passengers on the flight were headed to New York, with stops in Tulsa and Washington. They liked the low Pan Am fare.
We saved a lot of money flying on this flight. We can spend it in New York shopping.
$165.
We can buy an extra pair of shoes in New York.
Pan Am has 3 flights daily out of Oklahoma City, to Miami, Tampa, and Houston, as well as Tulsa, Washington, and New York. From New York, connecting flights leave for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Miami is the departure city for flights to Central and South America. Pan Am has advertised that it makes the going great. Now Oklahomans can decide for themselves whether that's true. Bill Ross, Action 4 at Will Rogers World Airport.
Oklahoma weather cooperated beautifully today for the arrival of the Vice President of the United States at Tinker Air Force Base. Accompanied by Secret Service and his own personal White House staff, George Bush was greeted on landing by a host of base commanders and their wives. After a brief handshake with the dignitaries, Mr. Bush was whisked off for a brief tour of the base facilities, which included the Tinker AWACS wing. Also on the whistle-stop tour was the Jet Engine Repair Building. Impressive, it's one of the largest maintenance depots in the world. At a press conference after the tour, the Vice President addressed a variety of topics, including the Reagan administration's stand on Social Security. In a heated answer, he strongly denied accusations that the administration opposes the program.
That is blatant demagoguery, untrue. In fact, I'd call it worse, but we have a charming day and I don't want to ruin it. And it is outrageous the way it has been politicized. And we have a responsibility as an administration to make that Social Security Trust Fund sound, and it should be done in a bipartisan fashion, and it will be done right after this election, because you don't want to get it caught up into a lot of partisanship when that commission reports.
After the press conference, Vice President Bush dined here at the Officers Club with base dignitaries and members of the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. In his speech to the group, he talked about President Reagan's upcoming trip to Europe tomorrow. After the dinner, Vice President Bush left Tinker en route to Denver, where tomorrow he will attend the graduation exercises for the Air Force Academy. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at Tinker Air Force Base.
It's small now, but Salvation Army officials hope it grows soon. This is a dream finally realized, a primary care clinic for people who don't qualify for Medicaid and can't afford medical treatment. The clinic will be open for the first time tonight at 7 o'clock. It will be open at that time each Wednesday for 3 hours. Cost of treatment will depend on the patient's ability to pay. It's free if necessary, because without it, some people would just not get the medical care they need.
There are men and women and children who need attention and need it for preventive purposes, need it to keep it from getting worse, to keep it from getting to the chronic stage. And that's what we're trying to do here, is to impact at the initial stages before it gets to the chronic stage.
Equipment and supplies were donated to the clinic by Doctors General Hospital. Several pharmaceutical companies are providing the drugs needed. A doctor from the hospital, as well as other personnel, have volunteered as staff for the clinic. If hospitalization is needed by a patient, Doctors General will provide that too. It's the Salvation Army's way of making sure that people who have lost everything else can still keep their health. Ted Brown, Action 4 at the Salvation Army.
At one time or another, most of us have found ourselves in this situation. Not a pleasant experience. It can be even more unfortunate if the driver at fault does not have insurance. For several years, it has been a state law that all drivers carry insurance in the state, but up till now, that enforcement has not been effectively carried out. Lawmakers hope a new bill that has just been signed by the governor will help alleviate the problem. Upon its enactment, insurance companies will be required to issue a card to every vehicle owner, which will be used as evidence that the driver does indeed have insurance. But insurance representatives are unhappy about the new law. Chris Waters says he's afraid it won't decrease the number of uninsured motorists and in turn will only raise rates for law-abiding citizens.
The rate should increase simply because there is a cost involved in producing this little card, in reprogramming the computers to print out the information on the card that is required in the law, and to mail the little cards out to all the policyholders. So yes, the cost will be incurred and will be passed on to the consumer.
For now, drivers don't have to worry about the new law. It probably won't go into effect until July of next year. But proper notification will be given to all drivers, and after that date, if you don't have a card when you're involved in an accident, you will be subject to a stiff fine and possible loss of your license. Carol Lambert, Action 4.
The local magazine rack is a good place to go for some diverse reading and viewing material. Oh, there are places where you can find that disgusting, smutty stuff. But at the local bookstore, you usually won't find anything stronger than Playboy and the usual benign titles. But what's this? Yes, Newsweek with a naked lady on the cover. It's a portrait of a woman named S, which must save her a fortune in address labels, but the article is about a return to realism in art. And because of the realistic cover, many stores in this city are taking Newsweek off the shelves.
It seems strange that such a prestigious magazine such as Newsweek should be pulled from the shelves merely for displaying a portrait that also happens to be of a nude. After all, some of the great art from the past are nudes. The Sistine Chapel ceiling at the Vatican is covered with them. So we thought we would ask people whether or not they found this cover to be offensive.
I don't at all. It's like a painted portrait. It's nothing like you'd see in any of the girly magazines in a pornography store. So I like it.
Art, it's art. I don't find that offensive. Well, I think it's a work of art. I think the woman has a beautiful body. So
and therefore?
Not offensive at all. No.
Well, I'm a nudist, so it wouldn't offend me. Still, there are always going to be people who find this kind of thing offensive, and store managers are going to pull them off the shelves if Newsweek does it again. So we've come up with a little solution for them. It's called the cover option solution. They just install a little overlay here, and that fixes that. Ted Brown, Action 4.